Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brennan McLaughlin.
Hey, I'm Mike Broad.
And I'm Tim Havler.
Yay, Tim.
Yay.
Brennan, what's the scenario today?
Ooh.
All right. Well, everything is not all it's cracked up to be at the construction site for the second location of the souffle stop. The concrete foundation is cracking and crumbling, and all signs point to the batter, the concrete mixture created at the concrete plant, and it failed to cure. But the concrete plant accuses their new hire, a truck driver that brought them one of the ingredients for concrete. Apparently, the truck that transported a load of sand to the plant was contaminated with sugar, resulting in the failure to cure days later. Now the heat is turning up on a court case that hinges on whether the CGL Auto Exclusion applies. Did the damage occur in the truck or elsewhere? But before we get into that, we've got to do our trivia question. So when I was doing this, I was forever confused about the difference between cement and concrete. And I just thought I'd quiz you on that and throw in a couple more C words to see if we can puzzle this out. These are all in, you could put them in order, use one to create the other. What order would you put these four items in if you wanted to, if you were doing construction with cement and concrete? What do you think is an ingredient and the next thing up in the chain?
Or is this historical?
I don't know anything about. I know. I feel like the Romans had some kind of version of cement or concrete. But I don't know much about the history of it all.
I'm taking this from a historical perspective, and I'm sorry to jump in, but so I would say if you looked at early construction, you would start with clay because it was abundant and out there, easy to get. Cast stone would be second, and then I'm with you, Brennan. I think ancient Rome, other places used concrete. And then I don't think it was till more modern times that we used cement.
Well, that was really impressive, Mike.
Thank you. I don't know if it's right, but
you're way past anything I can offer. I'm going to say clay, cast stone, cement, concrete.
All right, see, he's got to be contrarian, and I appreciate that.
Always.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's like this wasn't what I was going for anyway.
Well, I think I got you on this one because, hey, I didn't know this. I had to figure this out. So totally right. Clay is the first step. Obviously, there's other things that go into it, like we're learning today with sand. But then that goes into the creation of cement, actually. And then concrete. Cast stone could refer to other things. But what I was looking up was they form concrete into these blocks, which they can then use to build different things. So it's a form of concrete, but really tricky, to cement, concrete. To me, there's not natural what order they would go in or which one's an ingredient to the other one. Kind of like the tornado warning, tornado watch thing. I can never keep those straight.
Well, that's kind of important. Warning's a little more problematical, I guess. Yes. I mean, that means there's something in the area. So seek shelter. But again, I have to always complain about the trivia question because I hate being wrong. So I think if you go back and do research, you will find that at least when we're putting these in order of earliest to latest, hey, you're going to find that I'm correct. So I'm going to take the win. Thank you very much.
I do like the sugar in this. Is this a real case or did you make up the sugar?
No, it's a real case. And actually, that's a really interesting part of this because do either of you have any idea why sugar would be involved? Like, why would there be just sugar hanging around a construction site? Have you ever heard of that? I had never before.
I was wondering.
Other than little packets around to put in one's coffee if you so choose. But yeah, I have no clue why you would have sugar anywhere around it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more expensive than sand, I would.
Yeah, right? A bunch of those little, maybe it was one of the people just getting their coffee just right and spilled some in there. But no, hey, in this case, they didn't say it explicitly. I had to look it up. But the problem with the sugar was that it made the concrete fail to set. It failed to cure. So that's the use of it, actually. You just use a little bit, and it acts as a retardant where it delays how long it sets, and maybe that's useful for certain situations. Was not the intent in this case. So actually, I was really trying to dig into, hey, why would there be sugar in this truck at all? And it turned out it was more of a failure to clean situation. So maybe they needed sugar on a different a previous job. They didn't need it for this, and they failed to get it all out mixed with the sand in the next load, and that's where it came about.
We could really use an engineer on today's episode. Because so you're telling me sometimes you do use sugar in concrete or cement, whatever we're talking about, I don't know, in order to get it to cure at a different rate than just normal sand. So you would use sugar occasionally.
Yeah.
Because that was going to be my question. Why the heck is there even sugar if this is like a cement mixer? Why would you ever have sugar in there? And if cleaned it out or not cleaned it out, what difference does that make? Because you shouldn't have sugar in there at all. But you're telling me, Brennan, yes, you might use sugar in the curing process. That's fascinating. And then number two, I wonder, maybe the case doesn't say, but any idea how much sugar we're talking about? Are we talking about as little as a packet? Or I would assume there's got to be quite a little bit more than that of the sugar to ruin a whole batch of concrete.
That's a really good question. Yeah, no, I haven't. You stumped me. It does say, small amounts of sugar could be used to, kind of control the amount of time. So I think it's a kind of delicate situation. That's why when I drafted this scenario, I threw in kind of a baking metaphor here because it really seemed like there's something that went wrong with one of the little ingredients here, and it all just fell apart. But
and the souffle shop too. Yeah, look at that. See, Brennan here. I like it.
So ultimately, we have a CGL question. Then it sounds like.
Well, both, I think, right, Brennan? CGL and maybe an auto one too, thrown in there for a little bit of fun, huh?
Well, let's find out if they get to that second type of policy, because we've talked about this before. We had a really cool episode about the auto exclusion, and is this where does this fall? And one of the things we mentioned in that episode was kind of the purpose of, hey, why would you exclude? If you have a business, you have a CGL policy, why would you exclude something as critical as auto? As vehicles, because they come up in business all the time. Right. And what we had talked about was, well, it's just a matter of getting the policies to work together. That we already have a policy that's supposed to exist to cover that. And so the auto exclusion is important to kind of make sure that, the overall landscape of coverage is making sense.
Right. The old dovetail, right? The old one policy doesn't cover it, the other one's supposed to, kind of a thing. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So let's take a look at this exclusion and see if we make it out of the CGL or if this exclusion fails to apply. So in this case, let's think about that sand, getting in there, and this sort of chain of events where the sand mixed with sugar in the truck, and then it was formed into this mixture that was then brought to the site. The exclusion applies to property damage arising out of the ownership, maintenance, use, or entrustment to others of any auto owned or operated by or rented or loaned to any insured. Use includes operation and loading and unloading. So thinking about what happened here, where do you think the events, the facts of this claim, if they fall into this exclusion, where do you think they fall here?
Now, is this an exclusion?
This is actually the from the case. So it's that
GL
specific.
Policy?
Yeah, it's that specific insured's version.
So this is the auto
exclusion from the CGL form,
CGL.
correct?
Okay, got it. So one clarifying question, if I may, sir.
Yes.
Or Tim jumps in with something very profound. When did the mixing of this said sugar, sand, concrete, are we talking in like a cement mixer type vehicle? Are we talking at a ground facility where they were doing it by hand and then they throw it in the truck? So when exactly did this mixing of said sugar in the concrete happen, sir? Or in what type of
Yeah.
Where did it happen, Brennan?
Really good question. It is based on a case here, but it's my scenario. So we're gonna say it's a dump truck. It's not one of these. We're not at the stage of mixing it into concrete or cement where you have to keep it rolling and moving. And we're gonna say that it was not mixed with sugar before it was loaded onto the truck. We're gonna say the truck bed had residual sugar in it. And then the sand was heaped on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even had it been a cement mixer, could have been the same thing. There was sugar in there. Now we had sand and other stuff. All right.
Sure.
So it appears that the potential issue that caused damage happened in a vehicle, right?
I don't want to take the other side of that because
Please do.
I agree with that. But if I were going to take the other side, it would be something like the sugar didn't actually impact the mixture directly until it started to cure. Ooh. Although here's an interesting question. Could the sugar theoretically have been removed before we started mixing it? Ooh, or is it once it was all jumbled together, that was it? There's no feasible way to separate it.
So Tim's saying, could we have this same worker go through and pick out every grain of sugar?
Right. Giant magnet above.
Yeah, Tim, you talk a lot about in the materials you've produced for, especially in your CE course, about property damage and what is property damage and where does it happen. And in this case, hey, the sand isn't damaged, right? It's little pieces of grains of sand. Like the situation is at least theoretically reversible. The little grains of sand are not damaged. Was there really property damage here?
Yeah, the darn concrete's all cracking and crappy. So yeah, that's damage in my book there, Brennan. So that ain't gonna work with me.
Any other thoughts on that?
Too. If you have, I don't know, spray paint on a brick, you can't say, well, you could just take the spray paint off and the brick is fine. Like that is the damage, the fact that you have to then clean it. I still think that's property damage at the time of the mixture because it's no longer able to be used for its intended purpose. So it's really like that's the point at which it's lost or damaged.
Yeah, and that's where the court went with this. It's that is an issue that was raised by the plaintiffs in this case. But if we dig deeper into the language here, the CGL form defines property language, and part of that definition is not just physical injury to the tangible property, but the loss of use. So here we had sand that's no longer useful in this situation. So that qualifies as property damage within the explicit language of the policy. Yeah.
Can I ask a crazy question, Brennan?
Yeah, please.
What's the claim for? Was the claim for, hey, our concrete is damaged, the floor it's cracking, so we want coverage as whoever owns the property, or was it the construction company saying our sand is now can't be used because it's got sugar contaminated? So who's making this here claim, I guess?
Question. In this scenario, it's my concrete is damaged.
So where they going? So I used to work with back in the day, general liability policy. And generally the one big thing, just as a general, kind of broad statement, is the general liability policy is supposed to cover accidental damage, not stuff that results from mere workmanship or faulty workmanship. So I bet this claim originated under somebody coming under the general liability policy saying, hey, please repair this damaged concrete slab, and then they're coming back saying, well, we don't cover the insured's work product or faulty work, that sort of stuff. So not going to happen. Some courts have even ruled that doesn't even meet the definition of an occurrence, which is an accident if it's your faulty work that caused it. So then, being the bright people there, I'm going to get it covered under the auto policy then, because the mixing of the sand and sugar happened in the auto. So now I want coverage. But then, I'm wondering, where we would find an exclusion potentially there. I don't know. I'd have to look.
Yeah, so I think you're saying let's give up on the CGL.
Right.
We've lost the battle here. And then it falls to, well, thankfully they did have that dovetailing policy. They had business auto coverage. But they ran into a problem there. So again, this is the company that, they got the sand, they loaded it onto their truck, they mixed the concrete, they did all this stuff, and now they're seeking coverage from the insurance company under their business auto coverage.
Okay.
You see any problems with that? Right off the bat?
Tip us off to the relevant exclusion.
This will be care, custody, and control.
Right. So again, I mean, I think the intent is we don't want to cover your work product type related stuff, which would be stuff that's in your care, custody, or control, which would be the sugar and the sand and the concrete.
Yeah. So they're going to be out of luck. All right, I'm going to give some quick takeaways here. So in this case, you had a situation where there's a job site, cracking concrete, and the key question in the coverage turns on where did that property damage occur. This is an example of a situation where you can't just look at what's in front of you and say, hey, concrete's here, cracking, it's on the site. They followed back the chain of events and found that the actual damage occurred days prior in a vehicle. And this is another interesting case where second key takeaway is it demonstrates how policies work together, how you might have two different policies and it won't fall into one because it's not really what the policy is intended for. And third, I would say the third key takeaway here is the loss of use element. Was really an interesting argument where situation where there wasn't actually property damage, arguably, to sand itself, but because you had that loss of use, the court looked at what is actually happening with these materials, and gave some thought into, the loss of use element, which is laid out explicitly in the policy. So a very instructive case, and we'll put it on the screen as well.
So where can we find this stuff, Brennan?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, where can we find this?
Go. Well, plrb.org. And check out, there's an end brief. You have coverage questions involving any of this stuff, I'm sure. Care, custody, control, property damage, the auto, and general liability, how they work together like peanut butter and jelly. And there you can always go to your annotations, which will take you into keywords that you'll find in both contracts. And then you click on it, and it will take you to extensive investigation into what that wording means, how different courts have interpreted it. I'm a coverage nerd, so I find it absolutely fascinating. Used to spend hours with the kids gathered around going through different contracts and talking about some of this stuff. So fascinating, brings back wonderful memories, I'm sure, at least for me, probably not the kids. So would you be kind enough if other people want to do an activity like that with their family where they read insurance contracts and take into annotations? Would you be kind enough to share these in the show note, Brendan?
Absolutely. And there you'll also find a recap of the key points from this episode and links to our social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us. And please give us a call at 630-509-8704 and leave a voicemail to share your adjuster story.
Please call us, please.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Yes, we will. Bye, everybody.
Bye. The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.